There's a specific kind of disappointment in video games that I don't hear people talk about very often. It's not the kind when a game is bad, and it's not the kind when a game is broken or unfinished or overhyped or anything like that. It's the kind of disappointment where a game is good, like it's clearly well made with intent and care. It's the kind of game you should love, and yet you don't. This has happened to me a few times now. Games where I felt like I was part of the target demographic. Games that, on paper, line up perfectly with my tastes. Kingdom Hearts, Ghost of Tsushima, the Yakuza franchise, and probably the one I'm most uncomfortable to admit, The Witcher 3. Yes, as much as I hate to admit it, I tried to beat The Witcher 3 on 2 separate occasions, and both times I just gave up and lost interest altogether. And as someone who's been playing video games for 30 years, and as someone who is constantly seeking out narrative-heavy games, I'm kind of disappointed to just talk about this out loud. But yes, it's true, I just could not see this one through to the very end, and today I want to talk about why. So I was there on day one when the game was released. I was hyped. The build-up was real. This was an open-world, story-driven RPG that I've been waiting for. I played the game and I loved it. I made it all the way to Skellige, twice, and then I stopped. Not because the game was too hard. I've played a few FromSoft games, so I wouldn't say it's a skill issue, and not because the game was too long either. I'm no stranger to games that take like 40 or more hours to complete. I stopped because eventually I realized something I didn't want to say out loud. When I stopped playing The Witcher 3, what I felt most was relief. And that's hard to reconcile with a game that so many people call the best that's ever been made. Because here's the thing, I like The Witcher 3. I respect it. I think it starts strong. The writing is sharp, the world is rich, the side quests are some of the best I've ever played in recent memory. But maybe that's part of the problem, because every time I play the game, I tell myself the same thing. This time, I'll just focus on the main story. But then a side quest pulls me in, and then another. And then I'm playing Gwent for 2 hours straight. And that's when I stop and think to myself, if I'm having fun exploring, and if I'm having fun doing the side quests, and if I'm genuinely getting something out of this world, why does it still feel like I'm failing the game? Why does it feel like there's a version of this experience I'm supposed to be having? Because no matter how much I respect it, I just can't stay inside the world long enough to finish it. And what makes this even stranger is that CD Projekt Red also made one of my favorite games in recent years. Maybe one of my favorite games of all time. I love Cyberpunk 2077. I adore everything about Night City. I love the writing, I love the characters, and just the way it feels to exist in that world. This video isn't about which game is better. It's about why one of these games completely works on me, and why the other, despite doing so many things right, eventually lets me go. So The Witcher 3 starts off strong, like I said before. Even without playing the first 2 games or having read any of the books, it feels promising. There's one quest early on in the game that sticks out to me as an example of everything the game does right. It's the one with the Wraith by the well. I used Geralt's senses to identify it. I consulted the bestiary to figure out which oils and signs would give me an edge in combat, and then I went in and took care of it. It's clear what my goal is at the start of the game, to find Ciri. Along the way you meet a cast of characters that are fascinating in their own right, Yennefer, Triss, Dandelion, but without prior knowledge of the source material, it felt like I was missing out, despite the game doing its best through dialogue to fill you in on key events that happened in Geralt's past. Even so, moments like the Bloody Baron's quest immediately pulled me in. I understood who he was and what he wanted and how he fit into the world. And then there's Gwent. I didn't expect it to hook me as much as it did. I wanted to chase down all the cards and just build the most powerful version of each deck. For a while, Gwent was more than a distraction. It was like a self-contained game inside of this game, and I just couldn't get enough of it. As someone who's a fan of Magic the Gathering and Flesh and Blood, Gwent definitely was a welcomed addition. But things started to shift the first time I reached Novigrad. That city is huge. It's bursting with side quests, contracts, and other missions. The options to the player is intoxicating, but they also start to fragment your attention. I found myself chasing down the best gear for Geralt, wanting to tweak him into a playstyle that fit me perfectly. I loved every second of it, and yet every step I took towards the main story started to feel heavier. The side quests that were once fun became a form of resistance against progression. They were still really well written, still rewarding in their own way, but the pull away from the main narrative made the main story itself feel tedious. What started as a tightly woven journey into Ciri's story gradually became a sprawling epic full of incredible moments, but moments that no longer felt like they were leading anywhere. And that's the paradox that The Witcher 3 asks of you. It offers depth, freedom, and richness beyond almost any game I've ever played. But in doing so, it asks you to manage your own momentum. You want to follow the main story, but the world is too alive and too inviting that it almost doesn't let you. Cyberpunk 2077, in a way, kind of feels similar. The side quests are the real meat of the game, but here's the difference. I could pursue every side quest and gig in that game and still feel joy returning to the main story. The narrative never felt like it was waiting for me to catch up. Instead, all of those little distractions fed right back into who I was inside of Night City. In The Witcher 3, side quests are rich and memorable, but they often pull you so far away from the main story that returning to the main quest feels like work. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't break that rhythm. It carries you forward, letting side stories and the main narrative bleed into each other. Cyberpunk hooked me from the prologue, just like The Witcher 3. But as soon as I woke up in Victor's Place and started exploring Night City, I fell in love with that world in a way that just felt different. Every district has its own personality and flavor. You could feel the divide between the haves and the have-nots as you move from the glitzy corporate towers to the crowded neon sane streets of Watson and Santo Domingo. The city feels lived in. The streets are full of people, the air full of noise and energy. That's the kind of detail that makes Night City feel like it's breathing, alive with its own stories, independent of the player. Companions are something that matter in both of these games, and Johnny Silverhand quickly became my favorite. I'll never forget the mission where you reunite with his old gang for a final gig. Sharing the stage with him wasn't exactly exciting gameplay, but it was deeply satisfying. Completing that questline, fulfilling his dream, it brought a genuine smile to my face. It's a small story moment, but it stays with you. Then there's the pacing. The main story missions don't always flow one after the other. You usually need to wait for a phone call, for the next story beat to trigger. That breath between the main quest felt natural. Filling that time with gigs and side quests and optional content never felt like a detour. Whenever I returned to the main story, it felt organic, never forced. Even the side content, optional gigs like chipping in where Johnny and V share a moment in the oil fields, deepened my understanding of their relationship. These side stories didn't pull me away from the main story, they enriched it. They made the stakes hit harder, and it made my character feel real. Cyberpunk does something for me that The Witcher 3 couldn't. The side content is the meat of the game, just like The Witcher, but here it feeds the main story, rather than fragmenting it. The detours, the exploration, the small personal moments, they enhance the narrative instead of pulling me away from it. Every interaction feels like it was part of a larger, cohesive whole, and that, more than anything else, is what makes the game stick. Now, there's one key difference between these two games that makes me prefer one over the other. It's not the setting, or the combat, or the quality of writing. It's the protagonist that you control. Geralt of Rivia is an established character. He comes with his own history, his own relationships, politics, and moral code that already exists long before you ever pick up the controller. You don't become Geralt. You guide his decisions, you steer his path, but you're always seeing the world through a lens that was written long before you got there. That's effective, but it also creates distance. No matter what decisions you make, you're still playing as Geralt. The world reacts to him based on what he represents, not who you are. You're inhabiting a story that already knows where it came from. V is different. Street kid, nomad, corpo, It's just enough to give you texture without telling you who you're supposed to be. Night City doesn't treat you like a legend. It treats you as someone trying to survive. And because of that, the choices you make feel personal. The side quests don't feel like detours from someone else's story. They feel like an experience that defines who V is becoming. Your relationship with Johnny, your connections to characters like Panam, Judy, or Carrie, they don't sit on top of the narrative. They are the narrative. And that difference mattered way more than I expected. For a long time, I treated not finishing The Witcher like a personal failure. Like there was something I just wasn't doing right. Like if I pushed on and just ignored all the side quests or didn't care so much about min-maxing my build, that everything would eventually click. But the more that I think about it, the more I realize that maybe it already did. I spent dozens of hours in that game. I met incredible characters, I followed stories I still remember years later, I got lost in Gwent, and maybe the problem wasn't that I stopped playing. Maybe the problem was that the idea of stopping meant failing. When I put The Witcher 3 down, I felt relief, not because I was bored or frustrated or tired of it, but because I was finally being honest with myself. Honest about how I like to engage with the games I play. Honest about what pulls me forward, and what eventually lets me go. That doesn't make Cyberpunk better, and it doesn't make The Witcher worse. It just means that they're asking for different things. And maybe a part of growing as a player is realizing that you don't have to finish every game that you respect. You don't have to love every masterpiece. Sometimes a game can be important to you without being complete. Maybe one day I'll finish The Witcher 3, but if I don't, I think that's okay. Thanks for watching.